Are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hello, Jennifer. And I'm really glad that you've been able to join us tonight for this interview. And you are going to be our very first guest in our group. So I'm really honored to have you here tonight. And for anyone who's just new to joining this group, I'm going to introduce both of us. My name is Judith Ward, and I help people overcome anxieties and fears to transform into becoming calmer and happier versions of themselves. And I have a lovely guest with me tonight who is called Jennifer Craig, and she has a very interesting story that she's going to share with us about how she transformed her life from experiencing anxiety to becoming a speaker all across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So you give me a few little details already. So I'm just going to read it out for everybody just to get a little bit of background on you, and then you can start to tell and share your story with us. So Jennifer, you said that you have used different techniques to help you overcome your anxiety, and you would describe yourself as an introvert. And then you went and you did some training. So you did the Science of People Certified Body Language Trainer. So I'd love to ask you some questions about that. And now you have traveled across Canada, and you've been delivering this training on the power of body language and non-verbal communication. And you're about to launch your own coaching program to help women take control of their lives and speak their truths. And that sounds amazing. So do you want to spend a few minutes just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what we've just discussed?
Absolutely. And thank you, Judith. I'm so happy to be here. And that's wonderful to know that I'm the first live, or the first supposed to be live. We're recording it, but the first interview in this group. I'm super excited about it. So my journey has been quite a winding one, as everybody's has, I think. But I actually spent most of my career in the fire service in different roles. And I loved the fire service, especially as an introvert. It was the first time I felt like I had found my place in the world. But I also struggled with anxiety a lot of the time that I was in that role. I'm not in the fire service anymore. I actually left the fire service in 2017 to kind of head down a different path and get into coaching and speaking, although I had no idea what that would look like when I left my job. So it was very much a huge leap of faith. But one of the things that I ended up discovering was Vanessa Van Edwards does a TED Talk, and it's called "You Are Contagious." And she starts off by saying, "I'm a recovering awkward person." And as soon as she said that, I was like, I don't know what you're selling, but I'm buying it, because it just, the words just totally resonated with me. So, so then I went to her website, which is the Science of People. And that's where I found the Body Language Trainers program. And I thought, it was just, I think most introverts are very curious about people, and we're people watchers because we're not the extroverted, outgoing, charismatic ones. We're the ones that kind of sit back and take it all in. So I've always been curious about what makes people tick, and having my own experiences with depression and anxiety. I've always been a very introspective person and always curious about why I do the things I do. So I took the course more to help understand myself, but a byproduct of that was learning how it could help me with my anxiety, because it's an easy thing. Our body is something that we can control so much easier than our thoughts. We all know how hard it is to interrupt those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So I started to use what I was learning with the body language training to help myself become more confident. And just, I think one of the worst things about anxiety is feeling like you don't have control, and not being able to control your emotions or control your thoughts. And of course, they're all interconnected. So once we start with the thinking, it results in feelings, which results in feeling nervous and not comfortable and awkward. anxious. So understanding that I could just do like a couple little tweaks of my body made such a difference in the way that I felt. The more I played with it and learned and practiced the skills, the more confident I became. And when I talk about being an anxious person, I suffered from severe social anxiety. I missed so many family parties, Christmas parties, weddings. I remember my husband and I, when we'd go shopping at Christmas time, and I would see somebody coming that he recognized, and I knew he was going to stop and talk to them, I would literally go hide down a different aisle just to avoid the conversation. And I can laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny. I would totally hide. I was just, everything in me resisted having those interactions. So anxiety has definitely stopped me from a lot of things. So
That must have been
this
really, really hard to
changed me.
experience all of those feelings and feel, yeah, it was affecting you every single day if you were dreading going into supermarkets and having all those interactions.
Yeah, I could stay home for weeks on end and not see anybody except my family.
And how long have you had this? How long were you experiencing this social anxiety? Did it start at any particular point? Was there a trigger for it, or was it something that you've always had, and then this was the one thing that helped you move on from it?
I have probably had anxiety all of my life. I was always a very shy kid. My mom used to try to push me to make friends, and I really didn't want to. I had some friends in the neighborhood that I grew up with, but I didn't like to go out and meet friends. And of course, I hear parents nowadays saying, "Oh, I'm worried about my son or daughter because they're so introverted and they spend all their time in their room." And I'm like, don't worry about them. They're going to be fine. Don't push them. But I have always had a problem with anxiety, but I wasn't actually diagnosed with it until 2013, believe it or not. But it was something I've always lived with.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this training academy that you went to and how you were able to use the things that you learned to help you manage your anxiety. How quick was it for it to start to make a difference to your life? Or was it something that you had to work really hard at to make that difference?
I worked a lot harder in therapy to overcome my anxiety than anything, and it helped. It definitely helped. I did a lot of thought records. I tried different types of therapy. The last thing I tried was RRT, which is rapid resolution therapy, because I was struggling on my fire department. I had been away for a while and I returned to it, and I was overcome with feelings of not measuring up. There was some new people in my fire department. They were younger. I was constantly comparing myself to them. I was telling myself, I'm too old for this. I'm too out of shape. I don't learn as fast as these younger people do. And it was causing me incredible anxiety. And that's when I reached out to a woman who deals with RRT as kind of a last ditch effort for me to try and kick the anxiety, because I knew it was going to cost me my volunteer position in my fire department. But even having spent years in therapy working with this, it was actually the body language training that I think really helped the most, because it wasn't having to constantly correct my thoughts or try and pick them apart and find out what's beneath them. It's just what the biggest thing with the body language, the easiest tip I can share, and one of your group members asked about a quick fix for when you have to go out and socialize, especially this time of year. It's your posture. That is the easiest, quickest trick I know for so many situations, because when we're not feeling good about ourselves, whether it's anxiety or depression or just kind of bummed out, we naturally fall into a low power
We kind of
position.
don't we? Yeah.
Our shoulders are down, our heads down, we stay small. We're unconsciously trying to protect ourselves. So we curl up, maybe curl up on the couch or take up, we don't
almost like
take
into
up
that fetal
space.
position, isn't it?
Yeah. When you're not feeling good, you naturally kind of curl up to protect yourself. So understanding that that is what we do when we're not feeling good, and seeing that if we just shift our posture a little bit, and it can be just when you're having like a slow day at work and you feel yourself slumping down, your physiology, everything's connected. So if you're physically sitting this way, you're emotionally feeling that way too. So just even a change in your posture and sitting up straighter, it really, and taking up more space. And I don't mean like taking up more space than is natural, but just taking up space, because again, people that are feeling good and feeling confident, they naturally take up space. Their chest is more open because it's you don't have that fear response or that protective response. So just opening up more, it's expansive rather than restriction or contracting. And that is one of the easiest tricks I know. And I use it all of the time. It's just correcting my posture. If you're in a vehicle, driving somewhere, or if you're sitting at your desk or sitting on the couch watching TV, just be aware of your posture. And it's this trick will work even better, especially before going out to socialize, if you're practicing it ahead of time, because then your body gets used to being in a more positive state. Because if you're spending a lot of time kind of curled up and protective and low power, then to try and just correct it and go, you could do it, but it's not going to be as effective. So if they start practicing it now in just your everyday tasks, just being cognizant of how you carry yourself, it has a cumulative effect.
Absolutely, yeah. Like the brain's like a muscle, isn't it? And the more we work at it and we build those connections, then the stronger it gets. And even just the way you're talking about that, it makes me think, when I was watching television recently, there's a show here, I think you probably have the same in America, called The Apprentice. And one of the contestants was sitting so perfectly when she was doing like one of the business tasks, and I thought, oh my goodness, her spine's so straight, and she just had this aura of confidence around her. And even if she might not have felt it inside, she was giving off that presence. So yeah, even sitting talking to you now, I'm noticing, and I'm sure anyone who watches this interview will find themselves stretching and changing their body posture, and already you do feel better. That's a really good tip to have.
It's it seems like such a little thing, but it is such a big thing, because it affects everything. Our body language, your body doesn't lie. You can try and, tell little white lies with the words that you say. Like if somebody asks you if you're okay, you can say, I'm fine, but your body can't lie. It's going to show, because it's an unconscious thing. That's why I love micro expressions too, because they happen instantaneously and they're a window to what's going on. But with your body, it's just so powerful, and it sends powerful cues to other people. So as you just mentioned, the woman in The Apprentice, just seeing her sit that way, she could have still felt very nervous inside or uncomfortable, but the nonverbal cue that she's giving off, the signal she's giving off, is that she's more confident and feeling secure. So it's a very powerful, very minor thing, but very powerful adjustment, just to watch your posture and be aware of your posture.
And that's really useful for going into meetings or social events, or having to deal with a difficult member, colleague, or anything like that, or even a family member. It kind of just gets you into that different state of mind. We had one other question as well. I'm going to read that question out to you now. This was Kate. She was asking, how do we fix body language when we're talking to a person who is superior to you, so you don't show nervousness and lack of confidence? Is there anything extra that you would add to answer that particular question?
Definitely your posture and how much space you're taking up. Again, be aware of your inclination to like grip something in front of you when you're speaking with somebody that intimidates you, or if you're in a situation where you feel uncomfortable. A lot of people will, if they're holding on to something, they'll grip it like this. And it's not only blocking you anytime you hold something like that, it gives a nervous cue off to other people. So the tendency to hold on to anything like that. So being aware of your posture and taking up space. So stand with your feet shoulder width apart. And again, find a comfort level in that. With your arms relaxed and open and your shoulders back and your chin up. It's also good to be aware of what you do when you are nervous or uncomfortable. So we all have what are called self-soothing gestures that we do, nervous tics, whether it's some people like fiddle with their fingers, or maybe play with their hair, crack their knuckles, a pen. Yes, click, 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 click. So whatever your self-soothing gesture is, be aware of those things that you do when you are nervous or uncomfortable or not feeling good. Once you're aware of those things, kind of put it on your radar, then you're less likely to do them, or even when you do them, you can catch yourself. So if you're feeling that you're speaking with somebody that intimidates you, knowing ahead of time the things you tend to do when you're in a situation where you're nervous or uncomfortable, you can kind of inhibit that or stop that. I know some people worry that they talk with their hands too much, because there's a happy medium with how much you use your hands. As introverts, that was something I had to work on, because I don't gesture with my hands a lot. They're very quiet. Like my whole body language is quiet. So I had to learn to become more engaging by using my hands and moving my body a little bit more. But you don't want to be like jazz hands. You don't want to go to the extreme. So if you know that you kind of have nervous gestures with your hands, holding a glass or holding a pen, even as long as you're not clicking it, just holding something in your hands so that you're not as likely to gesture as much with your hands.
Okay.
Because all of these things that we do communicate nervous energy to the person we're talking to on a physical level and an emotional level. So it's important to just have that awareness so that you can work on calming those things instead of bringing them out more when you are nervous.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their little habits, and the more, if you watch, for example, even someone on a Facebook Live, there's one lady I know, and she's an introvert as well, and she does lots and lots of Facebook Lives, but I tend to notice that when she gets like a little bit, she always goes like this with her hair. And I don't know whether it's her trying to compose herself, but it is, or whether it's just simply a habit. But yeah, we all have these little things, and most of us don't really notice them. But if you feel like it is making you nervous, then yeah, you said the first thing is to become aware of it and try.
Because the more you do it, the more nervous you're going to feel.
Yeah.
Because you think you're especially now that you're aware of it, when you do it, and going forward, anybody that's listening to this conversation will be like, oh, I do this a lot when I'm nervous. And then you'll catch yourself doing it and be like, uh-oh. But you also have to kind of have a sense of humor about the whole thing, because like anything, it's a new skill that you're learning, and just having an awareness now, like the people that are listening to this conversation will have more of awareness about these things, and they'll spot them in other people.
They won't notice that certain things that they're doing, or even the way you form your sentences. Sometimes we probably become aware that we have bad habits, and yeah, that's my habit, is I always go and the end of my sentence, and yeah, that can make you nervous if you're aware of certain things. But yeah, just being aware of it, and
because it gives you the power back, because it's having that little bit of control, that feeling of control. Because anxiety, from my experience, the worst part of it was feeling like you have no control over it, because your thoughts are racing and your heart's beating and you're sweating and you might be short of breath, and that is a hard thing to control. but your breathing definitely is one thing I always turn to, is doing something called box breathing, to calm myself down, but also just knowing, catching myself, oh, I feel like I'm kind of closing in. Okay, reminder to just sit up and take up space and just kind of anchor yourself in that position. And that's why I recommend starting doing these things now, just as you're at home in a comfortable environment and kind of peaceful, and you don't have anything that's causing anxiety. That's the best time to practice, because then you get to feel, oh yeah, it does make a difference when I sit up, even if I'm just on the couch watching TV. And it gives you that feeling of, wow, this is something that I can control. I might not be able to control other things, but I know I have a little bit of control here. And even that little bit is enough to calm you a little bit more.
Okay. So what if some of the people, some of the clients who come to me say they some days are worse than others, or morning anxiety seems to be a really tough time for them. So they wake up and they're kind of like, feel all those feelings of anxiety. What happens if you get any advice for anyone who's having a really, really tough day, hard to shift themselves back and gain back control, so they're feeling a little bit calmer, so they can go about the rest of the day, whether it's at work or if they have to go out to, it's coming up to Christmas, to a social event, and they're thinking if all those feelings of overwhelming are coming up.
It is body language, but it isn't body language. But for me, I find one of the best things to do is to actually move my body, because
Yeah,
it's so easy to, and I've done this many times. It's just those thoughts start even just as you're waking up. You're not even really awake, and those thoughts are starting. And of course, who's going to want to get out of bed and greet the day when they're already feeling bummed out, if to put it mildly. But I find that just movement is one of the best things, even if it's just going for a walk. I love yoga. I haven't been doing it enough lately, but I love yoga just because, especially as an introvert, it's a kind of smooth, soft, and not like a high power thing. I'm not one to be like, go, go, go and do. So I find things that work with my personality. Those are the ones that are most beneficial. So for moving, it's just as simple as walking the dog, or maybe doing some stretching, because we get so caught up in here, it's debilitating. It freezes you. So if you get your body moving gently and be kind with yourself, then I find that that's one of the best ways to kind of snap out of what's going on up here.
Absolutely. I think movement is so key in changing how we're feeling on that particular day. And even if getting out in the air, no matter how bad weather it is, it can really kind of shift what's going on there and bringing ourselves back into the present. So yeah, finding an activity that suits you, whether it is yoga, or some other people might like swimming, or someone else might like something completely different. But yeah, as an introvert, I'm an introvert too, is having that time to recharge. I mean, we're curious about other people, but yes, having that time, but having that human interaction as well is also really important, so that our brain doesn't feel like the whole world is a scary place.
That's a valid point, because I think so often, and that's one of my things, is that I always say I think. And I just because I said it and I'm aware of it, I said it again. But like anybody, I'm a work in progress. I find that now I lost my train of thought because I called myself out on my think.
I wouldn't have noticed that. So you're picking up on it.
It's almost a double-edged sword, because I'm so aware of certain habits that I have that I can't ignore them when I do see them or feel them. It's almost, it can be too much sometimes. But that's what I was going to say. You had mentioned being around people, and introverts definitely tend to withdraw because they're more introspective and enjoy quiet time. But people suffering from depression and anxiety obviously will withdraw too, because it's so hard to even manage our emotions thinking of trying to manage a social interaction is just like you can't do it. In my experience, it's just like, I can't even function myself and enjoy myself right now. There's no way I can go out and enjoy being with other people. On the flip side of that, we are our own worst enemies, and we can get so caught up in what's in here, you forget how other people see you because you only see yourself. It's like covering all the mirrors in your house. You have no reflection. You don't know what you look like or feel like or what you have to share with other people if you don't interact with other people. And you can get caught up in here in negative thinking, and then you'll have a conversation with somebody else and realize you're not alone. Other people think these things too. It's not as bad as you think it is, because we're our worst critics. We're so harsh with ourselves.
Yeah, we really are harsh on ourselves. We wouldn't be as harsh as hard we are on ourselves with other people around us. We would view them with more compassion and how we treat ourselves.
That was something I actually did one day when I was feeling really bad about myself. I thought, how would I, if I were a friend, what advice would I give them? Or how would I talk to them? And then I just started talking to myself as if I were talking to a friend, and I was overcome with emotion, because I think we are so used to being so critical, especially when we struggle with anxiety. We just want to get over it, and we wish we could just be done with it and not be anxious. And we're so tired of living that way, and we get so frustrated and angry with ourselves. And yet, if we tried to approach that with some kindness and compassion for ourselves and everything we've been through, because there's something that's caused us to have anxiety and or depression. There's been an event, in my experience, there's been an event in our lives that's caused this. And I think we need to just be kind with ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's people come, and sometimes people come for something completely different, but sometimes at the root of it, there's been a history, there's been a trauma, there's been something that has happened in their past that has caused their brain to react in that situation. And yes, we do need to be kind to ourselves. It's a little bit like if we were to read your story in a newspaper or a magazine, how would we view that story about Jennifer? We would be like, oh my goodness, she's had such a hard time. Every day for her has been a struggle. That must have been so tough. And if we look at it from that different perspective, we can view it with a little bit more compassion than how we would see it from ourselves. So it's kind of removing yourself from that situation. So how did the fire service receive your training, your body language training?
It's funny because I said to my husband not too long ago, I don't know what I was thinking trying to teach body language to firefighters, because I know what firefighters are like. They're very much, what are you going to teach me if it's not putting out fires or going to car accidents? It was very well received. I always got lots of good feedback, and it was a bit of a tough crowd. So it was a good crowd to kind of cut my teeth on, I guess, or dip my feet into the water with, because any groups that I've done that aren't fire are so much more engaging and fun and lighthearted. So it was a tough way to start, but it was good. For me, this is just people skills for the most part. It's people skills, and it's understanding that your vibe affects people around you. Like Vanessa says in her TED Talk, you are contagious. We do infect other people or affect other people with our vibe, our energy, our spirit, our emotions. So helping people understand that, when, especially in the fire service, if they're doing public education and trying to educate people, educate children about fire safety, if they're standing around cross-armed at a fire truck, kind of like this, people aren't going to approach them.
Yeah, it gives off that kind of like hands off. Yeah.
I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, because if that's what firefighters are doing, they're missing a valuable opportunity to educate the public, which is what, if they're doing public education, that's what they're there to do. So it's having an awareness about the things we do that can turn people off or turn people away, and conversely, things that we can do to make us seem more approachable, more open, and to connect deeper with people. So those kinds of things apply anywhere and everywhere. With the fire service, it was a little tougher though, but
yeah, so you were very courageous there to use that as your first audience, and to get that rate, you know, as a test audience, to see how they would respond. So if you could give the listeners or the watchers 3 bits of advice of things to avoid doing, and 3 tips, what would be the key gems that you learned from your body language training for them to take away and implement, what would they be?
3 things to avoid doing. I would avoid blocking, for sure. When you're having a conversation with someone, if you want to be more open, to not be, you know, your arms crossed, because that's kind of when I ask people what they understand about body language, a lot of them, that's one of the only things they come up with. It's usually posture, eye contact, and, oh, this is blocking. And it is. So it's something to be aware of. And it's the problem with a lot of these things is they're also comfortable, and their habit. So it might be comfortable to have your arms crossed and to sit back in a conversation. But when you sit back, you're distancing yourself and your arms are crossed. So you're not, like, even if you're trying to be engaged in the conversation, you appear as though you're not engaged, because body language is about encoding and decoding information. So it's decoding what other people are doing, their gestures and the meaning for that, and encoding what information you're giving off. So it goes both ways. So one tip would definitely be to watch your blocking, whether it's your crossed arms or clutching a book to you if you're talking to somebody, that kind of defensive gesture. Another one would be eye contact. There's an appropriate level of eye contact. It's about 60% when you're in a conversation. So just knowing if you're having a conversation with someone, trying to be aware of your eye contact and make eye contact with people, but not too much to be intimidating or invasive, but not to avoid looking at people. And the third one would just be your body language, like your body when you're talking to someone. If you're wanting to connect more with them, is to actually face them. So it's called fronting, when your head and your torso and your feet are pointed towards someone. So this is something my husband and I do a lot, because I make him. If we're going to have a conversation, I will turn to face him. Not every conversation needs that kind of attention full on all the time. But if we're talking about our day or trying to help each other with something, I will make sure that I put down what I'm doing and I will turn to face him. Because otherwise, if you're having a conversation and your body's angled away from someone, it doesn't feel very engaging.
Yeah, and so often we're preoccupied with tasks, aren't we? Like some people have phones, or if there's a home setting, they're maybe loading the dishwasher, or they're slightly distracted, and your body language is turned away. So that's a really good tip to have.
And it's an unconscious thing. Like, you might not be thinking, oh, their body is turned away from me. That doesn't mean they're paying attention, but unconsciously, you know that that's where their focus is, because your body will unconsciously turn towards what you're actually interested in, which is kind of, it's fun for like a party trick, because you can watch people interacting and you know, if say a man's trying to pick up a woman and her feet are pointed towards the bathroom or the door or maybe the buffet table, that's where she's really interested in. It's not in the conversation she's in, because it's an unconscious thing. Your feet point to where you want to go before you've even registered it in your mind sometimes. So just being aware of that when you're trying to talk to somebody, that is one of the best things you can do to foster engagement, is put down whatever you're doing and turn and face them.
Because sometimes people, I had one client recently who said that he really struggles to have eye contact with people. He finds it really uncomfortable. He says he notices that he wants to have his head down, or he's kind of like not having direct eye contact. So, and you know, obviously we have to have that balance where we want to have some, you said about 60 or 70%, and we don't want to be right in someone's presence, but actually to have that eye contact is important. So we have that engagement.
I wonder if it would be easier for him to even look when he's talking to somebody to look up here.
Yeah.
Because to them it would feel like they're looking into the eyes, but for him it might be a little bit of a kind of next step is to focus in this area.
Yeah, just looking in that one area until he builds up that.
As kind of,
It's like starting small, isn't it, and building up those momentum.
Because I know from staring contests as a kid, it was easy to look up here and I would still win the staring contest.
Yeah, so when you don't have to blink. Yes, I'm not going to blink. I'm not going to blink. I'm going to keep on going. So those are some of the things to avoid doing and some of the things to encourage doing, which is really, really useful.
Yeah, it's, I guess it was kind of a combination of both there, but there's definitely facing towards people, it fosters engagement and making eye contact. I'm trying to think of specifically for the biggest thing for anxiety is really the posture and being aware of when you're folding in on yourself. And even if you're not feeling good, and the last thing you want to do is pretend to be confident. I don't want you to pretend anything, but definitely going from a low posture to even just doing it in steps, just kind of lifting yourself up a little bit, because every little adjustment helps. Because when we're feeling stressed and we have cortisol flooding our system and we're in low power, even just that adjustment would decrease the cortisol and increase the testosterone a bit. There's actually something called, for those that are going out socializing and don't want to, there's something called a power pose, which is literally, if you think of Superwoman, and she stands up with her feet apart and her, I do this when I'm teaching, and I'm like, you picture the red cape flowing behind you.
I used to love that Wonder Woman outfit. I had one as a child, and imagine that power and that presence that you're standing and delivering. And if anyone hasn't heard of that, there is actually a TED talk on that as well, and that is Amy Cuddy.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can check out that as well. So there's quite a few things that people can look into in a little bit more detail.
That one I used in a lot of washrooms before I would speak. When I first started out, I would be in a washroom stall and I'd be doing that, and it helps because that one especially increases testosterone and makes you feel more confident because you're taking up more space. So it's not just moving your body, it's affecting the chemicals in your brain and your physiology, because as you know, everything's connected. So that's why I love body language so much, is because it's a small thing that you can do, but it can make such a difference.
What about in people who are going into things like networking situations where they have to, it could be even a social thing, where they have to go into a room and meet a lot of strangers, but they want to give a good impression? You know, we've talked about changing your posture as you walk in. How can you use body language to keep yourself calm whenever you've got like a whole lot of different people that you have to engage with in that room? Is there anything extra that they could do to help them get through that social engagement?
I would say, along with your posture being the first one, and taking up space, like even if you're standing around with a drink in your hand or at the buffet table or whatever, avoid the tendency to cross your legs and stand kind of in a closed position, but also showing your hands, because hands are what's known as trust indicators. When you meet somebody, the first thing you actually look at is their hands. A lot of people think it's their eyes or their smile, but it's hands. And it goes back to caveman days, because when you met a fellow cave person on the path, you automatically looked at their hands to see if they were carrying a weapon or not. So you knew if they were a friend or a foe. So this is genetically encoded in us. And even though we don't need that today, we have other kinds of stressors that we are reacting to, but hands still indicate trust. So when you can see people's hands, you feel more calmer, and it instills trust in people, because when you can't see them, you don't know what they're doing with their hands. And even though they might not be doing anything, your brain is still like, I can't, not safe. I can't see hands. Not to that level, but subtly, that's what you're feeling. So definitely a good handshake is very important.
Yep. A firm handshake. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And something else about a handshake is it's called haptics, which is a fancy name for the power of touch. So when you touch somebody else appropriately, I always say, when you touch someone else, it creates oxytocin in the brain, which is the same thing that eye contact does. So when you create oxytocin, that's like the cuddle hormone, it makes you feel connection to the person. So a good handshake, if it's somebody that you know and it's appropriate, a hug or a pat on the back or something, always when it's comfortable, but those are things that just make you feel more of a connection. And for people who feel a little self-conscious or anxious, if you have people that you're comfortable with giving a hug or a pat on the back, it helps you calm down because you're getting that oxytocin as well. So it's like ideal if it's a party where you do know a couple of people, because you can kind of warm yourself up by having conversations with those people and calm the nerves a little bit and touch them. Touch them a lot.
So speaking with the ones you're familiar with and giving them a hug or giving them a greeting, that sends that message into your brain of oxytocin, and it says, I'm okay here. I can cope with this situation. Accompanied with breathing techniques and everything else combined together can make a difference.
Yeah, there's actually something called box breathing or tactical breathing. It's something that I teach because I talk about mental health and emergency services as well. And that was also something that I've used in many, many situations to just calm me. And it's just the breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4. I've used that before presentations, before interviews, going to Christmas parties that I didn't want to go to. That's definitely getting your breath back is a huge thing. I don't know if it's something that all of your people in your group deal with, but for me, that shortness of breath is something that always came with my anxiety. And it's probably one of the things that...
Yeah, breathing is so important.
Yeah.
If you're feeling anxious or stressed, breathing is one of the first things to go. So yes,
it is.
Your breathing can really help. And what it does is it shifts your brain into that parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and restore. And it starts to calm you down rather than having that shallow, that short, shallow breathing that, some people have panic attacks, and it can really help. So what are your plans for the future, Jennifer? I mean, I know you talked about doing some coaching and helping women in the future.
Once I realized that maybe the fire department or firefighters weren't my ideal group to be helping, although I knew it helped them, I really, really wanted to focus on women, because I knew women, introverted women and women in business, especially in the online world, it's hard for introverted women entrepreneurs to show up in the online world, because it's more of, like the regular world, it seems like more of an extrovert's ideal place, because introverts kind of like to sit back and watch. So I'm focusing on helping introverts and female entrepreneurs to show up online, because there's a lot of things about profile pics that and first impressions in videos, because the first impression happens instantly. So whether it's in person or online, you as an introvert, or anybody really, you can take advantage of using your Instagram videos or your Facebook videos or your profile pictures to send out a more confident and solid first impression than what you might be doing, because you don't realize the tendency to kind of shrink back and how that can affect how you're seen in the digital world. but just helping women, because I know I struggled for so many years with depression and anxiety and feelings of not enough and not being capable or not having the ability to do what I want to do. As I discover things, I love to share them with women, because I think it's time for a shift. Like, the more women that are self-empowered, the more we can help everybody, like our families, our friends, our communities. So I'm very passionate about helping women specifically. So I did start a Facebook group, a private group called Mind Body Mastery, where I share some of the stuff I'm talking about, like body language and mindset stuff, just stuff that's worked for me along the way. But I'm in the process of creating a group coaching program as well. So we'll see how that turns out.
I think what you've described is going to be really helpful to women entrepreneurs or people who just want to kind of like move forward in their lives and not feel so stuck, people who are employed as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I mean, I know some people who will be watching this do want to run their own businesses, or are running their own businesses, and yeah, showing up, making those videos, doing those Instagram stories, or doing some blogs. Yes, it's kind of, you know, it feels like quite a tough world whenever you're seeing the extroverts out there who are all very confident and they think, oh, they can do this so much better than me. But we're going to, you know, introverts, we attract certain people. We don't all have to be extroverts and that really outgoing person, because we all are unique. And it's knowing that and not being able to move from feeling that, that feeling of I'm not enough, and not comparing ourselves to others and being comfortable in our own skin. So if anybody here wants to reach out to you, what we'll do is when I upload this video, you can post in any details if they want to contact you. And we can also arrange a Q&A for anybody who has watched this video and thinks, oh, I do have some questions now and I'd like to ask Jennifer. So when I upload this, you can put comments down below and we can schedule that another time. But I want to thank you, Jennifer, so much for your valuable time tonight in sharing these insights. And it'd be great if you could, when we put it in the group, if you could put a little link through to that TED Talk you mentioned. Some people might be interested in
Absolutely.
it, because it's, you know, I love hearing all about new ways of helping people personally, and so helping other people as well. Because I think that even if you feel stuck in your life right now, change is possible. You don't have to feel that way forever. You know, we're every day, you know, I know you mentioned the word work in progress. It's kind of like, let's just keep shifting. And we're almost starting a brand new decade. So this can be a great new time to make that change, to start to become that person that you want to be, that calmer and happier person. So do you have any questions or anything you want to finish just before we close today? Jennifer, anything you want to, you know, say to the listeners or the watchers of the group?
Oh, just don't give up. The anxiety, I know how awful anxiety can be. It is a real struggle, but there's definitely hope, and it doesn't need to be a life sentence. I think when we get the diagnosis of anxiety or depression, we think that's our label and that's who we are and that's where we'll stay, but that's not it at all. There's always something you can do to help, and it's just a matter of finding it, because I tried many different things. I was in therapy for years, so it's not a one fix for everybody, but there's always even a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of something else can really make a big difference. But I think your group is fantastic, and I'm sure it's helping so many people, and I'd be happy to get on and answer some questions if any come out of this, and for sure put the link to Vanessa's TED Talk, because it's quite good, as well as Amy Cuddy's that you had mentioned. I love that one too.
Yes, I really liked him. She's also written a book called Presence.
Yes, I've read it.
Yes, and she mentions in that about the power pose as well, but she also talks about what elements, and she did a lot of research into what is it, because there always is somebody who walks into that room and you're like, wow, that person just has that presence around them, and you think, I'd love to be like that person or acquire some of their attributes. But a lot of these things can be learned.
Definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. If I can go from somebody who would hide in the aisles and in our Walmart store to hide from people that my husband was going to talk to go from that to being somebody who speaks to groups of fire chiefs, there's hope for anybody, because I was the most fraidy cat, the biggest scaredy cat of anything. Like I didn't want to do anything, and there's definitely hope. I'm proof of that.
Well, I'm sure all the things that you've said today will help people, and people will resonate with that. So thank you again, and we'll finish for now, and we'll upload this into the group. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask myself or Jennifer. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.